Welcome to the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast. We're your hosts, CT and James. And on this episode, we have Storm Woerner. He's the CEO, owner of Xcel Performance in Jacksonville, Florida. He's a functional movement specialist. He's a nutritional consultant, and he is a member of the Lunge Gang. We get into his story, how he went from a really bad place in a completely different occupation to now running his own facility and training tons of people weekly. We talk about the benefits of lunges and ISOs, and we talk about the benefits of tracking food and sleep and recovery and all these things. We have a really awesome conversation with Storm. I think everybody who listens is really going to appreciate it. You're really going to like his story. We're going to get to know who this guy is, why he does what he does. Another big thing that we took from this is this guy gets up at 2:28 a.m. every morning and trains. Why does he do that? Why does he do such a thing that seems so crazy, so gnarly to all of us? Tune into the podcast and you will find out why.
And this episode is sponsored by Blue Winks blue light blocking glasses. So when you know you need to get to bed at 8 o'clock because you're getting up at 2 a.m. to crush your workout, right? You better have your blue light blocking glasses on so that you can start to calm down. Don't let any of that daylight affect your sleep. If you need to optimize your sleep, we know that blocking blue light before you go to bed is definitely beneficial to help your body start producing its own melatonin instead of just over supplementing. Let's do it the right way. BlueWinks.com. Use the code COFFEE. Blue Winks is BLUWINX.com. Use the code COFFEE for 10% off of your first order.
10% off. Use coffee. Appreciate you sharing. Hey, enjoy this. If you like what we're doing, follow us on YouTube so you can watch the video version. I always much prefer watching my podcast than I do just listening to it. But if you like to listen to it, find us on Apple, find us on Spotify. Give us 5 stars and give us a review. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about what we're doing. Let us know who else you want to hear on the podcast. So without further ado, episode 24 of Cutoffs and Coffee with Storm Woerner. We hope you enjoy, and we will see you after the conversation. Storm Woerner, episode 24, man. Cutoffs and Coffee. Welcome to the show. How are you doing, bro?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for asking me to be on here. I'm pretty excited. I've been looking forward to it for a while.
Awesome.
Absolutely,
man. We really
man. We're excited
that.
too.
Hey, we also, and you were probably going to say it, I'm going to get it out of the way. We were just talking about most people come on to Cutoffs and Coffee with no cutoff and no coffee, right? And Storm came prepared here. He is a member of the Lunge Gang. He has his own tanks with his own gyms. He's got his coffee. He's a member of the Lunge Gang. He's got the Lunge Gang tank all the way out there in Jacksonville. We're going to get into
this morning.
All this work,
nice.
and that's why I can't wear it now because it's soaked in sweat from a 3 a.m. workout, which we will get to. But real quick, Storm, before we get on to into the training and the business side of all the gym stuff you do,
sure.
Tell us something that we can't find out, us as co-hosts and then the people listening, that we can't find out and that we need to know about you that we can't find through either a Google search or scanning your social medias.
Sure. I think just like so many other people out there, you post all good things on social media, and you forget to post the bad things. And I just want to let people know that all the good things that I have, the family, the gym, the workouts, everything, it all comes from a struggle, and it's not. It's not, I just didn't wake up like this and it was given to me. So I never post about the struggle. I know we're going to talk about it here in a little bit, but at the same time, I don't really like to post about that stuff. I don't know why, but just personally, I just don't like to post about it.
Yeah, being vulnerable is hard. And also just like being in a situation like this, right? Where we're used to being in front of a team of 75 athletes. You're used to working, with people on the floor all day from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. and can have all these conversations. But this sometimes is uncomfortable for people. And so I appreciate you coming on with us. I know you mentioned before that this is kind of out of your comfort zone. So this is awesome, man. I'm glad we're able to put you in a position to be a little more comfortable, and you spend
Right.
so much of your time getting uncomfortable with training, something James and I talk about all the time. And I'm looking forward to getting into that. So you kind of teased it a little bit, man. Tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us, coming up and everything that kind of happened in between, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, how you got to the point you're at now, and then tell us where you're at now. And then we'll kind of get into all the, all the training conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I live in Jacksonville, Florida now, but I was born and raised in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So small Civil War town up in the Northeast, and very small town. Awesome to grow up in. Everybody. My grandparents grew up there. My dad grew up there. So I was born and raised there. As growing up, I played literally every sport possible. Snowboarded, karate, wrestling, football, soccer, baseball, swimming, everything. And about 7th grade, I got introduced to the gym, and I just fell in love with it. So we used to have a bus that would take us from the middle school to the high school. And so we could lift with the high school kids and the high school coaches. And it was just the best part of the day, every single day. That the atmosphere in the gym was just awesome. It was positive. Everybody's working hard. I just absolutely loved it. So, as I was progressing with working out, I started growing a little bit more. I was always good at sports. I was always coordinated, and I just started focusing on football and absolutely loved football. Lucky enough that our team did very well, and I was granted a scholarship to go up to Wagner College to play football up in New York City, Staten Island, still technically New York City. But I was up there for a semester and hated it. I hated everything about it. I loved the football aspect, but coming from a small farm Civil War town and going to a big city, it was cool at first, and then I just needed to go away. I needed trees, I needed animals, it smelled like pollution all the time. I was just like, this is not for me. I got to get out of here. So actually, the day that the first semester ended, I got a phone call from my mom telling me that her and my father were going to get a divorce. I'm super upset. Growing up, I thought that we had the picture perfect family. So it was kind of a shock to me, hang up the phone. I get home and I make a 4.5 hour drive in like 3.5 hours. I was just that upset. Well, I come home, kind of shell shocked with all of that. Didn't know what to do. We ended up losing our house. We ended up getting our cars repossessed, going bankrupt, kind of lost everything in a sense. And I was like, I got to stay close to family. I have to stay close to family. So I transferred to another university. It's called Shippensburg University. It's a Division II school in the middle of the state of Pennsylvania. And they were recruiting me out of high school. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to come here. I'm going to play football. And I was on the team that spring. And whenever it came through the fall, I got kicked off the team for not having health insurance. So through all of the divorce and losing everything, I lost my health insurance, and the school was just a little too small that they didn't offer that stuff. And so I wasn't on the team. And during the fall, I went back home, usually on the Saturdays you're with the football team and everything. I come back home to a party with some of my high school friends, and ended up getting in a lot of trouble. Got arrested, faced with a felony. It was a bad night. Kind of woke up in jail. So it wasn't very cool. And from there, I basically, due to all the court dates and everything, I had to drop out of college. So I drop out of college in that fall, go to all the court dates, come back in the springtime. As I'm sitting in class, I got a phone call saying that there was, I needed to come home for another court date. So I had to figure out how to get home. I get home, go through this court date, and I was actually, I was ordered to a court order rehab. So I was sent away for for 28 days, no connection to the outside world, no phones, no books, nothing. And it was an eye-opening experience for many different reasons. It was one of those things that I was so scared to go to, and then after I was there, I really wish that everybody could kind of experience that in their life, not as far as the rehab obviously, but talking to people in that group setting. And I got out of rehab. Whenever I was there, my grandma passed away, and I had to go over to Denmark so I flew to Denmark for her funeral, come back home. I was living with random families, random people. My grandfather, we were taking care of at the time, ended up going into like this retirement community. So I ended up actually living with him for a while. I realized that I needed to go back to college. So I pleaded and I begged the university to take me back. And so they ended up taking me back, and I was in school for computer engineering, and I realized that it's not what I wanted to do. So I switched and I became exercise science, double major in exercise science and biology. And I was thinking to myself that I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon. I wanted to make a ton of money. I just wanted to start my life over. And while I was doing that, I realized that I more than likely could not be a doctor with a felony. And so I had to kind of switch my train of thought. Meanwhile, I was off the football team. So the one thing that I absolutely loved, I couldn't do. But the strength coach at Shippensburg University was actually our strength coach in high school. So I reached out to him. He was a physical therapist, and I'm like, hey man, I need a job. So I worked in PT while I was at school. Hated physical therapy. It was such a boring sector. It was just like beating around the bush, and I was just like, I could do so much better. But at the same time, he was a strength coach for the university. So I would go over and I would go into the weight room and I would help out. I'm like, God, this is what, I miss so much, that camaraderie, that lifestyle, the energy. And I absolutely loved it. And I was like, you know what? My life kind of sucks right now. I might as well do what I really want to do. So I was like, I want to be a strength coach. So I kept working towards it. I took the CSCS, ended up passing the CSCS, and I didn't know what to do outside of college. So what I did outside of college is I just started calling and looking up random gyms all over the country. And I found a place out in Reno, Nevada, and I talked to the owner there for a while. And I said, hey man, do you take interns? And he's like, no. And I just kept begging and asking. He's like, you know what, if you can find your way out here, I'll agree to it, but I can't pay you anything. I said, that's fine. I'm not asking to get paid. So he was like, how are you going to get out here? And I said, well, I'm going to drive. Meanwhile, I didn't have a license, didn't have a car. So my grandpa at the time gave me his, 2004 purple Impala. So I just said, you know what, screw it. I had $17 in my bank account. And as a graduation present, my mom filled up my gas tank and started driving cross country. It was a 41-hour drive cross country, stayed in my car. I got around Iowa whenever a loan came through, so I was happy about that. But driving cross country, stayed in my car for a little bit until my now mentor kind of trusts me enough to come into his house, and I stayed on his couch for a while. And I'll tell you what, man, I learned more in those 3 months than the entire 4.5 years of college, as far as training goes. We went to the National Strength and Conditioning Association conference down in Vegas. The first thing that he said to me whenever I was driving cross country, I'm exhausted. I come into the gym, shake his hand. Before he says anything, he goes, how many muscles and what muscles tie into the shoulder? And I was like, oh my gosh. And he goes, there's an office back there. There's a bunch of books back there. I want you to look them all up. I want you to write them down. So go back. And that was just the type of guy he was. He was always looking for every chance to try and teach me. something. So I absolutely loved it. And I stayed out there for a while, and I was going to continue to live out there. But then my best friend at the time said he was moving to Jacksonville. He was going to become a teacher, and he said, "Hey man, do you want to live down at the beach?" And I'm like looking around, and I have one suitcase. I'm like, screw it, why not? So I load up my bag, put it in my trunk, talked to my mentor, who I still talk to now. I saw him last year, but told him my plans, and he said, "Go for it, man. You know, you always have a place back here if you want to come back." So drove cross country again, down to Florida, down to Jacksonville. We find this place, ended up going to this condo, this apartment, and they told me I could not live there because I'm a felon. So I was like, I just literally drove 43 hours. Now you're telling me I can't live here. Ended up meeting with them. They agreed to it if I paid a little bit more money a month. So lived there with like I said, my best friend, and didn't have a bed for a long time, sleeping on the floor. But at the same time, I was able to make it work. I had a job at a gym, personal training studio. Didn't have any clients, but at the same time, I would just go to the gym and I would sit at the front, basically work in the front from whenever time the gym opened to whatever time the gym closed, answering the phones, answering emails. You know, whenever trainers were sick, I would take their clients. Whenever trainers would leave, I would take their clients, just trying to build up my clientele. And it got to the point where, you know, my paycheck every 2 weeks was $400, and my school loans, you know, every month were $400, and then you have all the other expenses. And I'm just like, man, I don't know what to do. But I just kept sticking to it, kept working hard, never took time off. Still to this day have not called off a single day sick. Only vacation that I've ever taken was a honeymoon with my wife, and that was for 4 days. And it was just, I just built up that mentality of always being there. And people, you know, would see me, and whenever somebody left, they're like, "Well, what about Storm?" So I just built up this clientele, did really well with them. And then from that gym, one day, it was like, I'll never forget, it was a Saturday morning, come to the gym is completely locked. Our keys don't work, nothing. The owner went out of business, didn't tell anybody. So here we have all of these clients and nowhere to go. So I call another gym. The other gym was basically like, "Sure, bring your clients over." So go to this other gym, bring my clients over. They're extremely happy because, you know, we have a ton of clients, my business partner and I, and worked there for about a year. And then my investor asked me one time to come over to his house. This was on a Sunday morning. He's like, "You mind coming over to my house and stretching me at 7 a.m.? And I'm like, "Sure." And he's like, "Can you stretch my wife afterwards?" I was like, "Sure, not a problem." So I take a massage table over there. I stretch him. It must have been 7:30 in the morning. And finally he looks at me and goes, "What the hell is a 26-year-old doing at 7 a.m., you know, stretching an old guy like me on a Sunday?" And I said, "I mean, this is what I'm passionate about. Like I'll do anything." So he said, "You know, where do you see your future?" And I said, I want to own my own facility." And he said, "Why don't you get together a business plan, send it over to me, and we can sit down and talk." And I said, "I'll have it to you by the end of the day." And he said, No, take your time with it." And I was like, "Steve, I've been working on this for the last 6 years. Like I'm ready." And he was like, "All right." So I sent it to him. He gave me a call. He's like, "Hey man, I think I have the means to help you." Went over to, so I called my business partner, Alex. He's also an owner here at Xcel. Called him and I said, "Hey, we have this opportunity, like, you want in?" And he goes, "Tell me when and where." So we went over to their house. His wife made us the best sandwich in the world. We talked about it, wrote us a check, shook our hands, and we were off and running.
I think when athletes work with us consistently enough, and they see us in good moods, and they see us smiling, and they see us working hard, and then they have a bad day and they think, "Oh, this guy doesn't know what I'm going through." You know, I'm sure he didn't struggle to get here, right? You have a nice facility now. There's this, right? Like he won't get it. we get it, I think is what
Yeah.
you're saying, you know, like,
Yeah.
like you've been
It's
there and you've had to go through
right.
it. And there's a reason you do the things that you do. And there's a reason that you're successful and you're at the point you are at now. It can't be an easy story to tell. So we appreciate you sharing that with us. But this
Obviously
just,
there are a lot of details that, you know,
Ye-
but I was just trying to
yes. Yeah.
it's a long story, but whatever. I was just trying to give the bullet points.
Yeah. And that's great because, you know, these things stick out in our mind, in my mind, just listen to it. And I know the people are going to connect who are listening to it. And that's going to be able to help them, you know, take everything else that we talk about,
Sure.
and understand why you are the way you are and why you do things the way you do them. James, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, man, that's an incredible story. And I think, in our society today, we see a lot of interns that we work with. You know, we do expect a lot from our coaches that end up getting jobs in our facility.
Sure.
You know, I think when you're passionate about what you do, you see that end goal, and it's a clear end goal, even though that path along the way, you know, you might not have that roadmap ready to go. As you're going down this path in strength and conditioning, you know that you have the passion to be able to help people in this field. You had the experience to be able to work with a mentor who clearly had a positive impact on you as a coach. Right. Was there ever any moments in your career kind of after working with that mentor, opening up your own gym, you know, hey, like it's starting to click? Did you have any moments that made you really like kind of take a step back, look at what you've been doing, and either affirm what your process is as a strength coach, or kind of change how you work in your clientele interactions? Has there ever been any moment where you really shifted your paradigm, and maybe that was with your mentor, that this is what I thought strength and conditioning was, this is maybe what I should be doing now?
Sure. It's funny you say that, because there is as far as being, you know, lunge gang, there is a distinct time that something just switched in my mind, and it just like opened up a whole new world. So actually, whenever I was in Reno, we went down, like I said, down to the National Strength and Conditioning Association, their national conference, and I ended up meeting, obviously he's not going to remember me, I was just a college kid, but ended up meeting a guy, Todd Wright. And Todd Wright was the strength and conditioning coach for the University of Texas men's basketball team for years. And then he went to the 76ers, and now I believe he's still on the Clippers. So on the LA Clippers. And when we were sitting there talking, he looks at me and he goes, "Storm, I want you to perform a lunge." So I was like, all right. So I did a lunge, and he goes, "Now I want you to do another one." So I did another lunge, and he goes, "Okay, now I want you to do another one." And I did another lunge, and he was like, "You know, there are 3 planes of field, and you know, there are the 3 different muscle contractions. Why did you do the same lunge?" He was like, "What is sport, you know, taking place in? It's the frontal plane, the sagittal, the transverse, eccentric, isometric, everything." And he's like, "Why do you do the same lunge?" And it was just like my eyes opened up, and it was just like boom. So all of a sudden, every single exercise, it just became mind opening, like mind blowing. So every single thing that I could do, you know, I could take one exercise and I could immediately make 15 based off of that one individual and their specific goals. And that at that moment, I was like, man, strength and conditioning is so much more than proper snatch form and proper power clean form and proper squat form. Like, it is so much more than that. There was also another moment whenever I was in Jacksonville. I met the strength coach for the Jaguars, Ms. Linsky, and he said, and I'll never forget, he said, "Storm, I'm a physical therapist 90% of the time. I'm a strength coach 10% of the time." He said, "It is our job to keep athletes and individuals healthy." He was like, "You know, you get to a certain level, they're already going to be strong. They're going to be the best. They're not professional weightlifters, and we don't need them to try to be. But we have to keep them on the field." And it was just like everything that I thought strength and conditioning was just kind of changed in my mind. So those were the two big moments that were kind of like eye-opening to me.
I think that's a great point from a standpoint of like looking at the athletes that you're already working with, right? They're
Sure.
coming to you, they're probably already at a high skill level in their sport. And it's a little different when we're talking about like youth development programs and in the 10 to 14-year-old kid, right? But, when we're talking about these high school players or these college players, they already have a skill set. And what we see sometimes is that strength coaches try and take their system and put these athletes into their system as
Correct.
opposed to look at this athlete and how can we maximize their skill set as it already is. What are some of those foundational pieces that you like to incorporate in your training? I've seen some of the exercises that you do in from your posts on Instagram. What are some of those foundational pieces that you look like to enhance this athlete as opposed to take this athlete and shove them into this box that is a system?
Sure. So I created my own kind of movement analysis that I'm calling it, or that I've called it. So it incorporates a couple of the FMS exercises, and it incorporates a couple of the CPPS exercises and a couple other ones that each athlete that comes in, I have them go through this movement analysis. And based off of that movement analysis, I can determine if their thoracic spine is super tight, if their hips are tight, if their ankle joints are super tight, if they can't get into an overhead position, if they can't do certain things. And then if that athlete can't do that, so I will switch my workout to make sure that they can do that before I start really loading them. If that makes sense. So instead of like, before I even meet this individual, if the first workout is going to be, squats, let me make sure that he can squat properly. Let me make sure he has the proper shoulder mobility to be able to squat properly. So from that, I kind of create the program for the individual instead of the other way around.
That's awesome. Being in the private sector, you've got to be able to work with plenty of different people, age groups,
Yes.
demographics. I mean, everything, 8 to 80. What does to give the people listening an idea of the difference in the people you're working with throughout a day? What does a day look like for you over there at Xcel? From, I mean, the moment you get up, do your thing, to when you shut those lights down, what's that look like? Who are you with? What are your offerings? All that kind of stuff.
Sure. So my typical day, my alarm goes off at 2:28 in the morning. 2:28 in the morning, wake up, take my pre-workout around 2:35, leave my house around 2:40, get to the gym around 2:50.
I love you saying that, but that is exactly how I am. Like, alarm is 5:43. Like, I'm out, coffee's done by 5:47. Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that.
And then I start my workout between 3:10 and 3:15. Go through my workout. I have the first clients kind of rolling through the door between 4:15 and 4:30, but they go through their own kind of little warm up. And then I typically have between 4 and 6 people at 5 a.m. And then, I have that steady, depending on the day. So Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I have that straight through until the afternoon. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm basically here from 3 a.m. until 11 a.m. or 3 a.m. until 11 a.m. and I come back in the afternoons. But as far as the individuals go, so like, let's take today, for instance, I had one individual that came in that had a bruised tailbone. So I had to change her workout for her. I had one individual that came in that almost chopped his finger off, trying to cut a tree down. So I had to change up his workout for him. Another individual that has a disc replacement in his neck, nerve damage down his left arm, no ACL in his knee. So I have his workout. Another individual that just wants high intensity workout, and another individual that is trying to be a power lifter. Literally. So it's just all of that was at 5 a.m. So you have to come up with those separate programs for them. And then each hour it's similar to that.
And that, so we somehow caught you at a time in this day to be able to have this conversation.
Yeah, that Tuesday, Thursday in the middle of the day, I'm open. Yeah.
Well, open, yeah, kind of. So you said 2:28.
2:28.
Where did this start? Why early in the morning? Most people will say, I don't have time for insert. We talked about a couple podcasts ago. Yeah, but right is how that conversation goes. Why 2:28? Why do you train in the morning?
So based off of research, your testosterone levels are at the highest in the morning. That was one reason. For my personal reason, nothing can get in my way except myself. I'm the only one that stops me from working out. I will not let anybody else stop me from working out. I will not let, a client, a family member, nobody's awake at that time. So my phone doesn't ring, no emails coming in, no clients talking about food, no clients talking about injuries. It can just be peace and quiet, and I go through my workout. So I love being in control of the things that I absolutely love, and weightlifting and training is a priority to me, and there will be nothing that stops me from doing that. And I found out that, if I wanted to train in the middle of the day when I don't have clients, you never know, I might get a phone call, an emergency comes up, but nothing ever happens at 2:28 in the morning.
When did you start doing that, and then how long did that process take for you to be able to dial in that specific time?
So I actually, whenever I was in Reno, my mentor was like, when do you want to start? This was the day that I got there, and I said, I'll start tomorrow, because this was at the end of the day. And he was like, all right, I'll see you here at 5 a.m. And I'm like, 5 a.m. Are you kidding me? Because I just got out of college, and 8 a.m. classes were like super early.
Way too early. Right.
So, right. So I started working and interning with him at 5 a.m. And then whenever I got down to Jacksonville, my earliest client was at 6 a.m. So I would wake up, before 6 a.m. to come in and train them. And then life started happening, and life started getting in the way. And I was like, man, I just need to come in a little bit earlier. So I would come in at 4:30 to work out, and until 5:30, and kind of shower and everything until my first clients come in. And then I had a first client that came in at 5 a.m. And I was like, I won't say no to clients whenever I'm trying to build them up. So I'm like, all right, well, now that 4:30 starts to turn to 3:45 until 4:45. And then it just kind of progressed like that. So now it's one of those things. So now on the weekends, it's 3:30, I wake up, and, I'm ready for lunch by 9 a.m.
You've had a lot of opportunities to really learn and grow personally. And I look at that story that you said at the beginning, and I think sleeping on the floor is one of those big points where you get to learn a lot about yourself, like who you are as a human being. What have you learned about yourself since you started training there at 3 o'clock? What are some things that you learned about yourself that you either didn't know you had or didn't know you couldn't do? What are some of the big benefits that you've received from that outside of just having the free time?
Mentally, it's been huge for me. I love pushing myself. One of my favorite things is pushing myself, or whenever people say, you're crazy for that. And that's one of the things that, people always tell me, they're like, what time do you go to bed? And I said, between 8 and 9. If I see past 9 o'clock, I know I'm going to be really tired the next day, but I'll still wake up to work out. And they call me crazy for that. I'm like, well, what are you doing at 8 o'clock? Well, I'm watching Netflix for 3 hours.
Great question.
Well, I'm sleeping. And I learned a lot about myself that, especially with just having a baby, whenever Kayla was pregnant, Kayla's my wife, whenever Kayla was pregnant, I had so many clients, for her entire pregnancy. It was like, oh, just you wait. Like, you're not going to do it. You're not going to wake up at that time anymore. You're not going to work out at that time. And it just kind of pushed me. And it's weird. It's like, it is my first goal of the day. And if I start off my first goal of the day with a win, I know, I will start off with a positive mindset. And I'm all about that. I'll listen to different speeches whenever I'm working out, podcasts whenever I'm working out, or I'll just keep it completely silent. And it's just, you can't run from yourself at that time, and you just become, almost bulletproof and callous that mind. And it's just, it's, for me, it's a huge mental thing for me.
What does training look like for you at that time? I know I've seen a lot of stuff, and we'll talk about a little bit about this, but I asked that because, for example, I think it was months ago, I saw a workout where you just decided you were going to do 10 walking lunges, starting at 5 pounds, working your way up to 100 pounds. I saw you do that. I for some reason, I thought that's a great idea. Let me try that. I sent you a message about that. And right. that was the hard, and I played college football for 4 years in the Big Ten, played professional football for 9 years. That was the hardest workout I'd ever done in my life. And that was like, like a slow Tuesday morning for Storm. So like, what does your training look like, and where do these ideas and inspirations come from?
So again, like what we were just talking about, I love challenging myself. Absolutely love challenging myself. And a lot of times whenever I'm training, I go to a different place in my mind, and I start looking, and I was like, man, anybody lunge the hundreds? And I was like, I'm going to, tomorrow for my workout, I'm going to start lunching the hundreds. And I was like, at the same time, I haven't seen anybody lunge the 95s or the 90s or the 85s. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to lunge every fucking dumbbell in this place.
Oh, and, that's incredible.
So I decided to do it. And then whenever, it always sounds like a good idea whenever you're motivated and you're inspired and everything. And then the morning comes, and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? But at the same time, like I absolutely love that. I love that aspect. And then whenever you're done, you're like, you know what, I did it. So I love those mind and physically challenging workouts that whenever you're done, you feel accomplished in so many more ways. But yeah, so I love doing that stuff. And I also have about a day or two a week where all the research that I do, because I just love this field, research I do, people I listen to, on your podcast and different things, I will go through and I'll do trial workouts and see where I feel it, see how I'm supposed to feel it. And then look at the programming and say, okay, where can I fit this in? So it's almost like 2 or 3 days a week, I'll do trial workouts. And then other days of the week, I'll just try and, kill myself to see how much I can take, because again, I try and pride myself on being mentally strong, and, if one foot can go in front of the other, there's no reason to ever stop.
Yeah. I think in January, when we were doing our 15 minutes a day, you had done a workout of maybe a stair run at a stadium, and then a mile lunge in between, something like that. And when I felt bad about myself, or when athletes were talking about how they felt bad after 15 minutes, I remember telling myself, bro, Storm is out here lunging a mile at a time. I mean, things that I'd never done either, whether that be just the entire workout or a part of a workout, or it was 400 meters at a time. And so watching you has inspired me and helped me take my place, my training to places that I didn't think I would be able to get to. And then you see people like you and some other people who are out there doing those things. And it's very inspiring. So I appreciate, the effect you've had on me, and some of the other people who I try to share all your stuff with. Talk about trial, talk about training. What are your goals as an individual? Because people would see this, what do you mean lunge a mile? This guy's not going to be able to walk for the next 6 days. How does that have anything to do performance? How is he going to be able to get any better from that? Right. Body's going to take 2 months to adapt to that. What are some of the training goals when you go out there and you start doing these crazy, what you want people to say, right? These crazy workouts. Sure. What goals do you have personally when you're doing these?
As weird as it sounds, I want to prove to myself that I can do it. If it's a thought in my head, I want to prove to myself that I can do it. If it's a training goal, if I know I'm not going to hurt myself, I know I'm going to make myself stronger. So, that first walking lunge of the mile, extremely brutal, extremely difficult to walk the next, 2 days, but at the same time, it didn't kill me. I knew it made my tendons stronger. I knew it made joints stronger. I knew it made muscle stronger. And then another one of those thoughts, I'm like, I don't ever want to be this sore from, I know not a lot of people lunge a mile, but I'm like, I don't ever want to be this sore again whenever I do this. So then it got to a month where every Wednesday I would lunge a mile. And it was just like, it was like an escape, but at the same time, at the end of the month, you weren't sore afterwards. And you were taking your joints and your muscles to a different place. And you could just feel the adaptations, neurologically, physically, and I loved it. So I guess my goals are to challenge myself, prove to myself that I can do something extremely difficult. And then I love the aspect of being able to do anything pretty much. So me being able to do that, I proved to myself like, okay, I can lunge this mile. My joints are good. Nothing is broken. So in a weird way, it's almost like an injury prevention for my mind. Yeah. But I would never tell a client, hey, your workout today is lunging a mile. That's for me.
It's funny because as you're saying it, I'm thinking, James, our athletes who are listening to this know that we're cooking up some stuff now.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, oh boy, I wish they would have never talked to Storm, because they're going to have to do something like this. Go ahead.
So, I think again, going back to like the norm of the field, right? So we have, the old school idea of what a strength coach is, a yeller, a screamer, that drill sergeant in the weight room. Then you also have the exercise scientist who's in love with the research process. It's very rare where you find a guy like yourself who is in touch with the research and continuing their education, but at the same time, in their own workout habits, they're pushing their limits to the extent with doing what seems like randomized workouts. How does the research that you do and looking into that influence your workouts, or is your workouts your own thing and that's your space? How do you balance those two concepts?
So pretty much my workouts are my own thing, but at the same time, so whenever I'm doing the research on the lunges and how incredible lunges are, and like you said, breaking away from the norm, like breaking away from thinking that squat is the almighty God whenever it comes to weightlifting, breaking away from that, and then looking like, hey, this is good for your joints. This exercise is great for your tendons. This exercise is great for your big toe for injury prevention. And it's one of those that like, I just try and take what I learn and then I put it in my own workouts, but then I kind of bump it up to challenge myself a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, from your experience, then you're able to take a consolidated version to your clients. What do you think is some of the biggest impact that you've had from your own workout experience, and then giving it to people as, exercise prescription, you could say, in their workouts that has the most profound impact with their results?
Oh, it's great. So we have this tool called the InBody machine. I don't know if you guys have an InBody, but you stand on it. It's an impedance machine, and it will tell you your percent body fat, your skeletal muscle mass, your fat mass, water weight, and everything. And I just try and tell people, like, so I do that myself, and I'll go through, these workouts, and I'll do it myself, and I'll see the growth that I took with the proper nutrition. And then I will give it to clients, and, they roll their eyes every time they hear another lunge. And I'm like, listen, just trust it. I promise you, you eat proper, you do this, it will work. And so I have taken my workouts on a smaller level, given them to clients, and 6 weeks to 8 weeks later, they get on the InBody. They're like, I increased 2 pounds of muscle. I decreased a pound of fat. And they're like, oh my God, you were right. And it's just like, all of a sudden, the next thing, and be like, hey, guess what today's first exercise is going to be? It's going to be a walk and lunge. And they're like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So it's great in that aspect. So like I was saying, the trial and error with myself, and then trusting the research, trusting, the proper nutrition, and then giving it to clients and actually seeing their results. It just reiterates, that I'm on the right path.
You mentioned the technology you use there. You're also a fan of the Whoop. James and I've talked about it a couple of times, kind of tracking workouts, tracking sleep and things like that. What have you been able to, kind of put into practice, because you are constantly tracking your sleep and constantly tracking your activity and constantly tracking it sounds like food and intake and things like that. How else are you able to take kind of the information from that, put it into practice with other clients, but also be able to change some of the habits that you've had or that you have, and with training early at throws, I would imagine throws, all that kind of stuff off. What benefits have you seen from just the ability to use kind of technology in your training?
So the Whoop has been a game changer for how I feel. And I am not trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to, before I'd say the next thing, I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to, starve myself or anything like that. But whenever I fast, dude, the next day I'm in the green so high. But I don't want to fast obviously every day. So what I do is I realize I start to look at when I eat my last meal. And then I started doing research on meals close to bedtime, and typically whenever you're eating a meal close to bedtime, even if you're not trying to lose weight, your nervous system is working and your body is working to digest that food, so your nervous system is still working, so your heart rate variability is still increased a little bit. So for me, it has gotten to the point where I try not to eat past a certain time based off of my recovery. It has gotten to the point where, I love bourbon. If I have a bourbon at night, the next day I'm going to be in the yellow or the red. So now, I'll stop doing that. Or on the weekends, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it much earlier because I just like to feel a lot better in the morning. And the same thing goes with my clients, those early morning clients, whenever they're lackadaisical and they're not feeling the best. I'm like, hey, when was your last meal? What did you eat at that last meal? I'm not telling you this to lose weight. You said you want to feel better. Why don't you just bump up your dinner time a little bit? And man, it works like a charm. Obviously hydration plays a huge role in that, and being able to see that. So that technology I've seen for myself, once we get those monthly analysis and the monthly data, I will tell clients about that, and I'll actually pull mine up and I'll show them because, seeing is believing for them. So yeah, I love that stuff.
That was a huge thing that I noticed too. And as I was looking more into tracking activity and tracking sleep, I saw those, the meal timing was one of the biggest things that had the change on how I felt. And then also what the number looked like for my recovery the next day. You mentioned fasting a little bit. What's your fasting protocol look like?
So I love food. I eat a ton of food. But if I'm trying to fast, I will pick the busiest day that I have and I'll choose that day to fast. So there's no sitting down. There's no like thinking about food. There's no time for it. So there were times where I tried everything. I would do a 24-hour fast once a week. I would do once a month, I would do a 50-hour fast. And then I started doing intermittent fasting. And again, I am not trying to do anything other than stay in the green and feel a lot better. And that's a beautiful thing about nutrition. And I've talked to multiple clients and individuals about this, is you have got to find out what works for you. There's not a one size fits all. So try things, trial and error, try things, see what works for you. Your body might adjust a little bit differently than mine. And yeah, so my fasting protocol right now, I'm still doing the intermittent fasting. So I won't eat until 12. And then my last meal is right around 4. And I just eat a ton of food in that time. But at the same time, I'm doing this for about 2 more weeks, and I'm going to see the data from that with November, whenever November comes out. And then, but I love fasting. I love it. I love the mental challenge of it. And I love whenever people are like, I could never do that. I'm like, yes, you could.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of my protocol. So.
Yeah, that's great. I I feel like, do I say it every episode? Do I always say, yes, we talk about fasting? Because I know I did on the last one. I mean, it's something like you mentioned, it's the mental challenge. We had a nutrition podcast on a nutritionist on the podcast very recently. We talked about it a little bit, and I do understand where there could be maybe some lack of performance for athletes, college athletes, younger people who are trying to, perform and all that. But since I've been kind of out of that, and maybe the last 10, 12 years or so, we've been doing it. And the biggest thing for me, like you mentioned, is that daily discipline. And again, I said it last podcast, I'm saying it again. I think it's so powerful to understand that we as human beings don't have to be, we literally used to talk about it like being chained to the refrigerator.
Right.
Because what I recognized early on was, okay, I got to get to the gym at 5. My first clients are at 5. So that means I got to get up at 4 so I can eat at 4:15. And then, so it can start to digest. I can start feeling better, by 5 o'clock. Then I have to, okay, 8 o'clock is my next break. Then I'll eat a little bar. When you fast, like you mentioned, on the busiest days, we do weekly Monday 24-hour fast, and that's my busiest day. And I don't know about James, but it just like keeps me dialed in, keeps me reset, makes sure that no matter what I did that weekend, if it was Halloween and I had some more candy, or if it was the holidays and we were eating more, I know I'm going to come back and be disciplined with myself and start Monday off right, like you mentioned, starting the day off with a daily win. And I've seen just huge mental and physical benefits from that.
Yeah, and I think agree. And I think one thing too that like I've been either maybe a little bit better about with myself personally is like this month, like typically we fast on Mondays. This Monday I didn't. I've been so hungry lately, and I've been on a lunch kick lately. And like I ate a ton of food on Monday. I ate a ton of food, and today I'm fasting. Like I chose today, and so it's like letting myself like have that be like a little bit more flexible has been kind of nice, and not beating myself up over it. But then like going back to the discipline, being able to like, it's not my traditional day to fast for 24 hours, but hey, don't beat yourself about Monday. Like you still did your non-negotiable for that day, which was, my 15 minutes, and then move on. What are some of the other things, you've mentioned fasting, you've mentioned 1 mile lunge. What are some of the other like non-negotiable things for you, that you have will show up in a week of Storm's training or your work as a business owner even?
Oh man, work as a business owner, there's so many things that are non-negotiable. But that's just like the small stuff. But for my training, I force myself to do a crazy workout 3 days a week. I force myself to do a crazy workout 3 days a week. It's usually a lunge workout of some degree, and that's kind of in my mind, that's kind of like the non-negotiable thing. I lift extremely heavy, once a week, and then I do those trial and error exercises and things 2 days a week. But on those trial and error exercises, another non-negotiable thing that I started. I feel like I've been doing it forever, but I told myself that I would learn something, and research something new on those 2 days where I'm doing those trial and error workouts. And that's kind of something that I won't let myself get away from. So that's kind of non-negotiable for my training.
I do, Storm, want to get into, and you mentioned, running the business, because I think that's so awesome. I do want to get into that, but kind of last maybe training question before we transition to that. Your use of ISOs. You've been doing it a ton. You can scroll back for a while on your social media to see you've been using them for a bit. And recently we've been talking about using them in different ways, in different durations, and with different weights. What have you seen from using ISOs? What are some of your favorite ways to do it? And what do you think the biggest benefits are from that?
So biggest benefits that I have seen have been the lack of injuries, or how fast an athlete gets recovered. I was working with a couple professional basketball players, and who typically always have tendonitis issues in their Achilles. And So we've been doing a ton of ISOs. I worked with another professional basketball player that had such a jacked up knee, ACL surgeries, ended up getting sepsis, almost lost his leg, and his knee is just massive. And ISOs have opened it up a little bit. The same thing with the Achilles tendonitis. So many benefits, different ways to program them based off of the individual. So I'll have people doing ISOs if their big toe, if that hallux is super locked up and they can't get into an extension, I'll have them doing ISOs with their big toe, in that extension position. If somebody has weak ankles, I'll have them doing ISOs on a BOSU ball. So just knowing the athlete and what their specific needs are. Again, ISOs are non-negotiable for me. So, but knowing the athlete and knowing what their needs outside those specific tendons is how I will load those specific exercises.
I've maybe been a year or so where I've gotten into that. Now I feel the same way. I feel like I have to do it every day in training. I just feel so much better. I do them for recovery now, do them for warm up, do them in training. What are some of your favorite ISOs that you use?
I mean, my hands down, my favorite is the lunge. I love the ISO lunge. And it got to the point again where I love to challenge myself. So it got to the point where I was just doing a regular ISO lunge, and I'm like, all right, how can I load this? Can I do a back loaded ISO lunge? Can I do a front loaded ISO lunge? Can I do, a Jefferson lunge isometrically? Can I do an overhead lunge isometrically? So just seeing how my body reacts to different things. So ISO lunges are great, and a deep push up. So, stacking up the boxes and you come down chest past the box. So a deficit push up and trying to hold that, and not thinking. So it's almost like you're giving up to gravity. And so many times people think push up, an ISO push up, you're going to be trying to push that ground away. And I think complete opposite. I think about squeezing my back and just trying to fall into the ground. And once that happens, it just like opens up the joint and you could just stay there for forever. Yeah.
We, a couple of weeks ago, talking to Coach Austin Yoakum, he had mentioned the mental benefits as well. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. Oh, I got 30 seconds. Let me knock this thing out. When you're doing 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes of ISOs, you really get in a place where you try to figure out like what's going on up here. He kind of mentioned unread emails, like unchecked emails is kind of how he said it. I mean, you realize quickly on, like you said, a low push-up ISO, a lunge ISO, a hang, you notice quickly like where your brain goes when it wants to run and not really be and stay in the place that you're at. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about it, because these are things that you don't want to recognize. You don't want to recognize that you're weak and that you're tough and you're going through some struggles. And I really think ISOs do that. And for the people who aren't really into the deep side of it, it just is like pretty hard. So if we can, if you can do something hard and then it can help benefit you in performance, we might as well do it. And you can do it anywhere, which I think is another awesome thing about it.
My mind goes to the place where I know you were talking about 30 seconds, but whenever it gets extremely difficult, like I said earlier, if you can get one foot in front of another, you can continue to go. So it's the same thing with a lunge. If I can do one lunge, I mean, I can do another lunge. So the same thing with an ISO. If I think to myself, I'm like, all right, this sucks. Think to myself, all right, I did it for one more second. All right, I did it for another second. All right, I did it for another second. And then I can just like continue to hold it, because I'm like, all right, just hold it for 5 seconds. And then I hold it, and I kind of, in my mind, I set up mini goals whenever it gets to that point where you're just gonna drop, and then you just try and crush those mini goals, even if it's just 1 second.
And that's funny. So like if you're doing ISOs with a client, are you like telling them how many minutes they're going to go? I had a group of baseball players in last night. I said, hey, we're going to do a 2-minute wall sit. Let's knock it out. And at about 2 minutes and 50 seconds, the kid looks at me and says, there's no way it hasn't been 2 minutes yet.
Right.
And 3 minutes hit, and 3 minutes hit, and I say time. And then he was like,
Right.
how long was that? And I was like, it was 3 minutes. And he's like, but you said
Right.
2. And I was like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
how do you work through your clients with that? Because it's one thing to be in your own head. You have a
Sure.
very good control and will. How do you incorporate that conversation with your clients?
Sure. So I do very, very similar things because I know that clients can do a lot more than what they think they can do. And let's just say for plank, for instance, if I tell somebody, hey, we're going to do a minute and a half plank, there's not a chance in hell I can do a minute and a half plank. I'm like, okay, well, you know, try as long as possible, and we'll see where we're at, and then we can record it. And you know, minute and a half goes by, and then at minute 35, I'm like, done, minute and a half, and then they like get up and they're like, oh my God, that was hard. And I showed them that they were 5 seconds better than what they thought they could do. The same thing with different exercises. If I say, hey, we're going to do 8 reps here, and on the 8th one, and if I'm spotting them or close to them, I'm like, do one more. And you just see them just like dig deep in their brain and in their mind, and they just like they find it, and they're able to do it. And that's the type of conversation that I'm like, see, like, you can do it. You absolutely can do it. So stop before you even try. Stop saying that you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Human body's fascinating, isn't it? Let's talk a little bit about the gym, man. Tell us about Xcel. It is awesome. If you get an opportunity to see it on his social media, check it out. Tell us about how it came up. We kind of know that you got with your buddy, you opened it, but now this is your second facility, right? Moved out of the first one, moved into this one. Tell us about some of the stuff you got going on there. And then also I want to hear about just like the struggles of being a gym owner. Because I'm not quite there yet, but you know, it's kind of down the line, a goal. So tell us about that. Tell us about Xcel.
So Xcel started, like I already went through that story, but it was a very small facility. It was a 2,000 square foot facility with a back fire hall. So it was even smaller than that. And we had 2 bathrooms in there. And we had all this equipment set up. And I mean, this building was junk. And again, this is stuff that I didn't put on social media, but within the first 3 months in Florida, we opened up May 31st. So May, June, July, August, I think. Yeah. So June, July, August, we did not have air conditioning. And it was brutally hot. And those are the hottest months in Florida. We had a hole in the ceiling that we actually had to put a kiddie pool in the middle of the gym, and water was just pouring out of the ceiling anytime that it rained, and people would train around it just because, you know, they liked our training. But I mean, it was that part was tough, but we signed a 4-year lease there. We kept growing. And then I got a call from a landlord down the street and was like, hey, I know, you know, your lease is up in 4 years. What do you think about our facility? And I came and I'm like, hey, like, this place needs to be completely gutted. This isn't my dream gym. You know, I don't want to take this over, but if you're willing to, you know, will you allow me to kind of build my own gym? And he said, sure. So he gave us 3 months rent as we were doing the construction, the build out. So I was training at one location, and then I would come over, you know, and do all the manual labor. And we try to do as much work as possible by ourselves so we could save some money. And now we're in a 5,250 square foot facility. And it is just, it's amazing. I mean, we changed everything. We changed everything from the flooring to the paint, to every single bathroom was redone. All the lighting, all the equipment was new. So it was kind of like a dream come true. In our facility, it is personal training only. So there's no monthly fee, there's no yearly fee. So you pay as you come in, which is beautiful for the clients. A lot of times it's tough for the trainers because, you know, you don't get paid unless people come in. So people, you know, COVID hits and that shit sucked. But at the same time, yeah, that's our facility. We have Kaiser equipment, which I love Kaiser equipment. So the pneumatic resistance. We try to take as little equipment as possible, or we try to use as little equipment as possible. So we don't have leg extension, leg curls, machines like that. Like I'm a firm believer that the human body was designed to do more than just those. So I would be a bad trainer if I'm going to sit you on a machine and say, hey, let's do leg extensions. I would be a bad trainer if I said, hey, we're going to go over and we're going to hop on the elliptical. Like I just, there's more to it than just a machine. So yeah.
Yeah, those are good points. One thing that I think is not talked about a lot is actually the business of training, right? It's like we all love training and that's why we're in it, but actually making money right now, you're in a position where you can't only focus on how well you're delivering this service. You've got to focus on making money. So as far as the business aspect goes, what are some of the, some of the things that you've learned in the last couple of years from owning a facility, now owning this facility? What are some things that you could learn that would help you think, like younger coaches coming up?
So my best advice, and I've had people come up to me and ask advice. The thing that helped me the most was every single day you are selling yourself. Every single day you are selling yourself. Like you said earlier, we can't have an off day. We can't hide behind a cubicle. We can't have a bad day. We can't stay at home, working from home and being in a bad mood. So you have to sell yourself. You have to sell your energy. You have to sell your expertise. Never stop learning, regardless of what it's about. If you want to own a business, start from the ground up. Price per square foot, like everything that you think matters does whenever you're opening up a business. The cost to run credit card bills, the cost of toilet paper, like every single thing matters. But if you give the individual and the clients your undivided attention, if you're not going on all these vacations, if you're reliable, if they trust you, they're going to stick around. And every single day you have to show up with your A game every single day. Yeah, that's literally the best advice that I can give. Yeah. And whenever it comes to that, as far as owning your business, I would say the key thing is start small. So I was guilty of that whenever I first wanted to. I went to an investor and I had a little bit of an investor meltdown, kind of. I showed him, my paperwork and kind of the square footage of the building that I wanted and everything. And he looked at me and he just shook his head and he's like, you'll never make it. Like, you will never make it if you think that way. He's like, you gotta look at the size of the gym that you want, cut it in half, and then go a little bit smaller than that. He's like, you need to make money first. You need to establish yourself. If you bite off more than you can chew, you're going to burn before you even open. So, that's why we had a 2,000 square foot facility training in 1,200 square feet. And we would have 15 people in there in 1,200 square feet at a time. And people loved it. We showed up with A game. We had good music going on. We never, like I said, never had a day off, anything. We always said yes. We always helped out clients, and the business aspect of it will come, but start off small for sure.
What's the future of Xcel look like?
Man, that's a great question. That's a question I kind of ask myself every single day, yeah. Every single morning. Like I am a restless individual and I'm a goal-oriented individual. So every single day I come into the gym and we just built this facility. We've been open for a couple months, and every time I come into the doors and I step into the facility, I'm like, what's next? Every time I train clients or get new clients, I'm like, how do I do more? Like, what is next? So I'm still trying to answer myself that question every day. I would love to almost franchise it, but it would get into a sticky situation. As you guys know, in the training world, I can't just open up an Xcel down the street and people think it's going to be the exact same thing, because people come for you guys, people come for your knowledge, people come for your motivation, people come for your training skills. So if I just open up another facility, I mean, it doesn't mean that they're going to have the same mindset. And that's an issue that we're running into now. Whenever we're trying to hire new trainers and new people, it is so hard to find like-minded individuals. Especially in this field, a lot of people do it as like a hobby, and they don't need to make money, or they're not like goal driven, and they don't want to wake up too early, and they want to have every weekend off, and they want the holidays off, and they want to take vacations and things like that. I'm like, you don't make it. And the mindset of Xcel in this facility, like I want everybody, if they think of Xcel, that's the mindset they think of. I don't want them to think of a soft-minded individual.
Yeah, that's powerful. We work when other people don't, right? So holidays
Right.
we're busier. Right. On days most people's days off, weekends we're busier, mornings, nights we're busier. I want to wrap up, Storm, man, with a couple questions that kind of really don't tie in specifically with anything in any good order, but a couple questions to knock out, man, and then we'll let you go, because we know you got a crazy afternoon, crazy schedule ahead of you. You are a nutritional consultant. What are some of your, and we talked about it a little bit, everybody's a little different. But do you have any like general nutrition tips that will help Gen Pop clients or athletes? And I say this because, we post a picture of people asking, we ask the listeners to ask questions for the people we're having on. And anytime you get a big jack dude deadlifting with chains and 500 pounds plus on the trap bar, you get nutrition questions, right? We had the same thing with Tim Riley. So that was funny, but any kind of general nutrition tips for Gen Pop and for athletes?
So I'll say the same thing that I talk to clients about, because they'll ask me the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. New client, what do I eat? And I'm like, okay, well, we need to sit down. We need to figure out what your goals are. If your goals are to lose weight, if your goals are to gain muscle, if your goals are to put on weight, if your goal is to, be a lot more energetic, we got to figure out what your goal is first. And that's like I said, this beautiful thing about nutrition is that the keto diet doesn't, but at the same time, you can make a specific certain diet work for that specific certain goal. So if I have an individual that wants to lose fat, I tell them, hey, before we start, I want you to write down everything that you eat and everything that you drink today. We're going to look at it and write down how much of it that you're eating. I'll look at it. I'll break down the macros based off of their embody that we have. I'll come up with their total daily energy expenditure, figure out how many calories they burn during the day, and then I'll switch up their macros. The best results that I get with my clients are, and it is not shocking, it's lean meats, vegetables, and fruit. Like, stay away from alcohol, stay away from sugar, stay away from fried food. And it is not a no-brainer, but a lot of people have a hard time accepting that. So that's my best advice, is you got to figure out what your goals are. You can't just come up to a coach and you say, hey, what should I eat? Because that is a loaded question. You have to sit down with somebody, come up to your trainer and say, hey, my goal is to I really want to lose 5 pounds. Well, we know they don't want to lose 5 pounds of muscle. We know they want to lose 5 pounds of fat. So how do we get them to lose 5 pounds nutritionally of fat without, jeopardizing that muscle? A good rule of thumb, as you guys probably all know, is the 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I'll say that to a client that weighs 150 pounds, and they're like, 150 grams of protein? How am I ever going to eat that? And I do the math for them. I'm like, that's only 600 calories. It's 600 calories. Like, you can find a way to do it. But that's a big rule of thumb. And if I start them with that, I'll take a look at their food and I'm like, hey, you only had 40 grams of protein. You're tired because your muscles are trying to rebuild themselves from nothing. You're under eating on protein, you're overeating on energy, and you're just screwing with your blood sugar, and you're crashing, and you're coming in high spikes and you're crashing. So that's one thing. And if I say 1 gram of protein, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, it gives them something to shoot for. So if that individual that's intaking 40 grams of protein and they're like, hey man, I tried, I did as best as I could, and I had 100 grams of protein. And I'm like, that's fine. Do that. Continue to do that for a couple days. See if we can bump it up, because that's already better than what you were doing before. So if I give them that one goal and they try to really overeat on the protein, they're still under eating, but at the same time, their muscles are happy that they're getting that protein.
Oh, that's excellent. And how about, I mean, lunge has got to be number one, but favorite exercises, couple of them, 2, 3 of them, 4, that you like using with your, general population clients, and then also for some of your athletes, if you have like a couple favorite 2, 3 exercises.
So I don't know if you would consider it a lunge or not, but I love Bulgarian split squats. Love them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're right up there with lunges, man. So I absolutely love those, and everybody can do those. So I will have my 75-year-old client doing those. And the second that they say that they can't do it, up something so that they're going to feel a lot more stable doing it, and they're still getting the benefits from it. I love farmers carries, and I love heavy sled pushes, heavy tank pushes. And then for athletes, again, lunges, I love isos for athletes, and I love fast twitch movements. So again, working those tendons, try to really stiffen those tendons up, a lot of bouncing, a lot of jumping, and then on certain days, just, heavy lifting to get that nervous system going. But again, within each one of those exercises, there's a million different ways to do those exercises. But yeah, I would say lunges, Bulgarian split squats, farmers carries, tank pushes, and bounces, hops.
Oh, those are awesome. Yeah. Those are all like wheelhouse stuff for us. We love doing all that. Hey man, we'll wrap up with this. And I know you've heard this before on the podcast, but what do you think we are missing in the strength and conditioning world, us as coaches? What are we missing? What could we be better at?
Breaking away from the norm. I think that, I think we need to sit back, and we need to, if we're talking strength and conditioning, and if we're looking at athletes, I think that we really are missing movement. I think that, in this industry, again, everybody is doing the squats and the deadlifts. And again, there's a time and a place for the squats and the deadlifts. But what is the number one goal for an athlete? Number one goal for an athlete is to be on the field. Not a single time whenever I played sports, not a single time, middle school, high school, college, anything, did anybody ever come up to me and said, hey man, how much do you deadlift? Like, there could be somebody on the sidelines that deadlifts 800 pounds. Right. And if I deadlift 300, if I'm the better football player, I'm going to play. So the better player will play. So I think that as strength coaches, the word strength always gets misconstrued with, deadlifts and squats and how much weight are you putting up? And like I said, there's a time and a place for that. And yes, I love that. Like I said, I lift extremely heavy at least one day a week. But at the same time, like, what is the main goal of a strength coach? The main goal of a strength coach is, in my eyes, break away from the norm. How are we moving? How well do we move? How can we perform better on the field while staying on the field? And I think, we're getting there as an organization. I say organization as a whole with strength coaches. But I just wish that we would get there a lot faster. So yeah, I think we're missing movement.
I think that starts with just long duration lunges. Just start that, right? That's like you said, it's gonna help you. It's not, you're not gonna die. It's strengthening your tendons. It's strengthening your muscles. You've made so many great points about that in the podcast, and we appreciate that. Last thing, man, where can people find you? People want to know more. Where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram. It's just Storm_Woerner, WOERNER. And then at Xcel Performance 904, Xcel Performance 904. And that was one thing, whenever you were talking about the lunges, I'll have somebody lunge for the first time and they're like, this is really hurting my knee. I'm like, good. Like, continue to do them. I promise it's not going to hurt after a while.
Yes.
So I think, so many times people, they feel pain and they interpret pain with an injury. Like, no, pain is not an injury. Pain is your body's way breaking through a compensation pattern. And we need to break through that compensation pattern to move better. And, it's worked wonders. So.
Hey man, you could have been taking a nap at this time. People would not have blamed you for that, but we appreciate you being on the podcast with us and talking training, man, and business and everything. And I think people are going to take a ton of awesome stuff from this. So thank you to Storm. Thank you for everybody listening. This has been episode 24 of Cutoffs and Coffee. Remember to always practice gratitude, to tell the people that you love them. And you got one life to live. Let's live that life stimulated. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.